The café was alive with its usual hum, steaming milk, the soft clinking of cups, and the quiet buzz of conversations blending like background music. But at a corner table near the window, one woman wasn't hearing any of it. Emily sat alone, glancing at the clock on her phone for what felt like the 10th time in 15 minutes. Her heart had been pounding with anticipation when she arrived at 6:30 sharp. But now, 2 hours later, she was staring at the empty chair across from her. A date that was supposed to mark a new chapter in her life had turned into a public humiliation. The waitress had refilled her water glass twice. Strangers whispered and stole glances at her, pitying, judgmental, curious. Emily smiled politely at them, but inside her confidence crumbled. This wasn't just a blind date. It was her attempt to believe in love again after heartbreak had nearly broken her spirit. And now, it felt like the universe had played another cruel joke. She picked up her purse, ready to leave, when the door creaked open. A man walked in, breathless, disheveled, and nothing like what her friend had described. Have you ever been left waiting, wondering if you made a mistake by trusting someone? Tell us in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else not to give up. And before we continue, if you believe in kindness and second chances, please subscribe. Join a community that spreads stories reminding us of the good that still exists in the world. Emily hadn't always been this fragile. Once, she believed in love with the innocence of someone who thought happy endings were guaranteed. That belief shattered when her last relationship ended in betrayal. The man she loved left her, dismissing her as too simple and too ordinary. Those words dug deep into her soul. For months, she avoided mirrors, friends, and hope. Every reflection felt like a reminder that she wasn't enough. When her best friend Clara set her up on this blind date, Emily hesitated. Clara promised this man, Daniel, was kind, stable, and ready for something real. Emily wanted to believe her. She spent hours preparing, choosing her grandmother's silver necklace, curling her hair just right, and rehearsing small talk in her mind. But 2 hours alone at a café had drained that fragile hope. She wondered if she was foolish for trying again, if some people just weren't meant to be loved. And now, the man standing before her wasn't the polished professional Clara described. His jacket was worn, his hair messy, his shoes scuffed. He looked tired, not just physically, but like a man who carried invisible burdens. Her first instinct was to leave. But then she noticed the tremble in his hands, the way his voice cracked when he said her name. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't dismissive. He looked human. Do you think everyone deserves a second chance, even if they don't meet our first expectations? Share your thoughts. Your comment could change how someone sees others today. Emily gestured for him to sit, her curiosity battling her disappointment. Daniel exhaled deeply, almost in relief. I know I don't look like what you expected, he admitted. But before you decide anything, let me explain. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. On my way here, I saw an older man collapse on the sidewalk. Dozens of people passed him by. I couldn't. I called an ambulance, stayed until help arrived, and rode with him to the hospital. He was alone. I didn't want him to be afraid. Emily froze. The frustration she carried melted away in an instant. She studied him differently now, the scuffed shoes from rushing, the jacket creased from supporting a stranger, the weary eyes of someone who had chosen compassion over convenience. That's why you're late, she whispered. Daniel nodded. 2 hours is too much to ask of anyone. I understand if you want to walk away. But I couldn't just leave him there. Emily's throat tightened. She thought of all the stories she'd heard of people ignoring others in need. Yet here was a man who showed up late not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. For the first time that evening, Emily smiled, a real unforced smile. I'm glad you came, she said softly. Relief washed over Daniel's face. To be honest, I thought you'd leave the moment you saw me. I almost did, Emily admitted, chuckling. But I'm glad I didn't. If you were in Emily's shoes, would you have stayed to listen or walked away after waiting 2 hours? Be honest, your answer might surprise you. What began as a rocky start soon became something Emily hadn't expected, a genuine connection. Daniel wasn't trying to impress her with grand gestures or polished words. He asked about her passions, her job as a teacher, her love for painting. And when she spoke, he listened. Really listened. In return, Daniel opened up about his life, a humble upbringing, struggles to make ends meet, and his quiet acts of kindness that few people ever noticed. The more Emily learned, the more she realized he wasn't just decent, he was extraordinary in ways that truly mattered. Weeks turned into months. Their bond grew stronger, but not without challenges. Daniel confessed something one evening that made Emily's heart ache. "The man I helped that night," he said quietly. "He was homeless. The doctors told me he might not have survived if I hadn't stayed." Daniel shook his head. "I don't see myself as a hero. I just couldn't walk away." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She reached across the table, holding his hand. "That's exactly why I'm glad you showed up, even if you were late." Not everyone understood their relationship. Some of Emily's friends doubted Daniel, wondering if he was good enough. But Emily didn't care. She had seen his heart, and that mattered more than polished appearances or fancy suits. Clara, the friend who set them up, eventually admitted, "I might have been wrong about what you needed. Looking at you two now, this feels meant to be." Do you believe small acts of kindness can change not only one person's life but two? Share your belief. Let's see how many of us think kindness can rewrite destinies. Months later, Emily often thought back to that night. She remembered the humiliation of waiting 2 hours, the temptation to walk away, and the shock of meeting a man who looked nothing like she had imagined. But now she knew, those 2 hours weren't wasted. They were the necessary pause before fate introduced her to someone extraordinary. Daniel wasn't perfect. He wasn't polished. But he was genuine. He chose compassion over convenience, people over appearances, kindness over ease. And that made him everything Emily never knew she needed. Her story became one she shared with friends. The blind date that almost didn't happen became the love of my life. In a world where people rush, judge, and walk past each other, Emily's story is proof that sometimes the ones who shock us most are the ones who change our lives forever. If this story touched your heart, comment below with the words, "Kindness can change lives." Let's flood this space with a reminder that compassion still matters. And don't forget, subscribe to join our growing family of people who believe in kindness, second chances, and love that shows up when you least expect it. Together, we can keep spreading stories that make the world a little softer, one heart at a time.